On December 2nd, 1943, the harbor at Bari, Italy was one of the busiest ports in the world. 30 Allied ships sat loaded with fuel, ammunition, and supplies. The docks were brightly lit, cranes were running, sailors moved across the decks. No one was watching the sky. The water was calm, the ships sat still. Everything looked exactly the way it was supposed to look. That was the problem. The harbor of Bari was one of the most important Allied supply points in the Mediterranean, and on this night it was completely undefended. 6 miles away, 105 German Ju-88 bombers were flying low over the Adriatic Sea. They were flying without lights, and they already knew exactly what they would find.
Gentlemen, the plan is clear. Observe the map.
Yes, sir.
We advance at dawn. Any questions?
No, sir. Dismissed.
3 days before the attack, British Air Marshal Sir Arthur Conyngham stood before a room of Allied officers and made an announcement.
Gentlemen, the Mediterranean is our lifeline. We must secure these lanes from the east. We enter Malta. Gibraltar holds the west. We reinforce it. All units is within reach.
He told them the Luftwaffe was no longer a serious threat in the Mediterranean. He said the Allies had achieved air superiority.
As outlined, the operation proceeds on schedule. Any questions? Very well. Reports to be filed by week's end. Dismissed.
He said any enemy air attack on Bari was more than unlikely. No one in that room questioned him. Conyngham had ordered no additional air defenses for the port. No radar was operational. No barrage balloons were deployed. The anti-aircraft guns were undermanned.
Meeting concluded. The decision stands. Bari will be left undefended. Understood, sir.
The briefing ended. The officers filed out. The decision had been made. Bari Harbor would remain exactly as it was, wide open and brilliantly lit. By the time anyone in Bari heard the engines overhead, the formation was already above them. 105 bombers, no lights, total silence until the first bomb fell. The Germans had planned this raid for weeks. They knew the harbor layout. They knew the ship positions. They knew there was no radar watching the sky. The formation crossed the coastline at low altitude. The pilots could see the harbor lights clearly below them. Bari looked like a lit runway waiting for them to land. From inside the lead bomber, the target was visible 6 miles ahead. The harbor glittering, the ships packed together, every light on. Nothing moving to stop them. At exactly 7:30 in the evening, the first bombs fell. What happened in the next 17 minutes would kill more people than the bombs themselves. The first bomb hit the water 20 feet from the ship's hull. A column of water shot upward. The ship rocked. Then the second bomb fell.
Explosion!
On the docks, sailors heard the first explosions and looked up. Some ran, some froze. None of them had anywhere to go. A ship on the left side of the harbor caught fire. Orange flames spread across its deck. Black smoke began rising into the night sky. The attack had found its first target. Within minutes, the fire from the first burning ship spread across the water surface between vessels. One ship's flames became 2 ships' flames, then 4, then more. Above the harbor, the bombers opened their bay doors. Multiple bombs fell simultaneously. The men on the docks watched them coming and had no way to stop them. The harbor became a wall of fire. Ship after ship detonated as ammunition caught. The explosions were so massive they shattered windows 12 miles away. One ship in the center of the harbor took a direct hit to its ammunition storage. The explosion that followed was larger than anything that had come before it, much larger. The shock wave from the blast hit everything within range. Debris rained into the water. Burning fragments arced through the night air. Ships that had survived the bombs were damaged by what came after. The water surface was now covered in a slick of fuel oil from ruptured ships. Orange fire moved across the water itself. The harbor was burning from the surface up. By the time the German bombers turned back toward their base, 27 Allied ships had been hit. 17 were lost completely. The harbor of Bari had ceased to exist as a functioning port. In the middle of that burning harbor sat one specific ship, the SS John Harvey, an American Liberty ship. Her manifest listed a standard cargo of military supplies. That manifest was a lie. Deep in the hold of the SS John Harvey were 2,000 M47A1 bombs, each one containing 60 to 70 pounds of sulfur mustard, 100 tons of mustard gas, sitting in a burning harbor. The fire on the Harvey's bow was spreading toward the main hull, toward the cargo hold. The men on nearby ships did not know what was stored inside her. Nobody told them. The shock wave from the Harvey reached every remaining ship in the harbor. A chain reaction began. But beneath the surface of the water, something invisible was already spreading in every direction. When the attack ended, the harbor of Bari was silent. 27 ships destroyed, hundreds of men in the water, and coating every surface, a dark, oily film that nobody recognized as a weapon. The liquid sulfur mustard from the Harvey's cargo had mixed with the fuel oil already coating the harbor. Every man who entered that water was now immersed in a chemical weapon. None of them knew it. Men struggled in the oily black water. They reached for floating debris. They called for help. Rescue boats began moving through the harbor toward them. The men appeared to be survivors. The men pulled from the harbor that night seemed, for the most part, to be alive. Shaken, oil-covered, traumatized, but alive. They were taken to hospitals across the city. Their wet, contaminated clothes were left on their bodies for hours. Nobody thought to remove them. Nobody knew what was in the oil. The gas was doing its work in silence. The military hospitals received the survivors and treated them for what appeared to be blast injuries and oil exposure. The wards were crowded but controlled. That changed by midnight. Mustard gas does not kill immediately. It does not burn immediately. It waits. Hours after exposure, it begins destroying the body from the outside in and from the inside out simultaneously. Nurses checking on patients began finding something they could not explain. Skin that had looked normal was blistering and peeling. Not from fire, not from impact, from something else entirely. By the early hours of December 3rd, the wards were transforming. Men who had been talking were losing their voices. Men who had been conscious were going into shock. The pace of deterioration was accelerating across every ward simultaneously. The blistering was unlike anything the medical staff had treated before. Large fluid-filled blisters forming on the arms, the torso, the face, growing as the doctors watched. No treatment was stopping them. Men were going blind. Their eyes were swelling completely shut, eyelids sealed by blistering. Soldiers who had been able to see hours earlier were reaching into the darkness, unable to understand what had happened to them. Some doctors began developing symptoms themselves. They had touched the patients. They had touched the contaminated clothing. The gas was spreading through the hospital. Nobody still knew what they were treating. 6 days after the attack, a 29-year-old American doctor named Lieutenant Alexander arrived in Bari. He had been sent to investigate the rising death toll. Nobody told him what to look for. He moved through the wards methodically. He examined every patient. He cataloged the eye damage. He did not react with emotion. He observed with precision. He wrote everything down: diagrams, observations, measurements, every bed, every patient, every symptom recorded in the same careful handwriting. He was building a picture that nobody else had been able to see. Bed after bed showed the same pattern, the same blistering, the same eye damage, the same internal burns to the throat and lungs, the same progression at the same rate. This was not random. Within 24 hours, Alexander knew exactly what he was looking at. The burns were not consistent with fire or oil. The eye damage was not consistent with blast injury. There was one substance that matched every symptom: mustard gas. Alexander wrote the words on his note and encircled them twice. He identified the SS John Harvey as the source. He wrote his full report. Then he sent it up the chain of command. Alexander's completed report traveled upward through Allied command, from his desk to a senior officer's desk to a larger headquarters building, each stop higher in rank than the last. The report was heading toward London. When the reporter reached the upper levels of Allied command, the reaction was not gratitude. A senior officer read Alexander's findings. His expression did not change, but his posture did. The report was sealed and sent onward. It was no longer a medical document moving through a chain of care. It had become something else. It was moving toward a decision. From Bari to Allied headquarters, from Allied headquarters to London. The report traveled the full length of the command chain in days. It reached the desk of the most powerful man in the Allied world. Winston Churchill personally reviewed the situation. He read Alexander's findings. He understood what an admission of mustard gas in Bari Harbor would mean. And he made a decision. Churchill's conclusion was delivered clearly. He told his officers that Alexander must have made a mistake. The gas had not been there. The report was wrong. That was the official position, and that was final.
Initiate the cover-up immediately. No traces.
One phone call, one order passed down through the chain of command. What followed happened quickly, quietly, and systematically across every hospital and headquarters connected to the Bari disaster. Every military document referencing mustard gas at Bari was classified immediately. Stamped, filed, hidden. The paper trail that Alexander had carefully built was being erased from the official record. Every military doctor who had treated patients in Bari was ordered to alter their records. They were told what to write. They were told what to remove. They were told not to discuss it. Cause of death was officially changed on chart after chart. The words mustard gas were crossed out and replaced with 4 words. Burns due to enemy action. The truth erased on official documents across the entire theater. Families of the dead were told their sons and husbands had died in the German bombing. They were not told about the gas. They were not told their government had put 100 tons of chemical weapons in an undefended harbor. They were told nothing. Stuart Francis Alexander was reassigned. He spent years knowing a truth the world was not allowed to hear. His report was classified. American records would not be declassified until 1959, 16 years later. The report went into a filing cabinet. The drawer closed. You are now exactly halfway through this story. What comes next is the part that was hidden for 16 years, and the part that changed medicine forever.
The truth is locked away.
But before Alexander left Bari, he had noticed something else. Something in the hospital wards that nobody had asked him to look for. Something that had nothing to do with the cover-up. In every patient exposed to mustard gas, Alexander had observed a consistent effect on the blood, specifically on white blood cells. The mustard gas was destroying them, rapidly, completely, in every single patient. To most observers, this was simply another symptom of the poisoning, more evidence of the gas's devastation. Alexander saw something different. He asked a question that nobody else had thought to ask. If this chemical destroys white blood cells this effectively inside a living human body, what would it do to cancerous white blood cells? He wrote it down and underlined it twice. Alexander sat with that question. The implications of it were not small. Cancer researchers had been searching for decades for a chemical capable of selectively targeting and destroying rapidly dividing cells. That is what cancer cells do. They divide rapidly. When Alexander's classified findings eventually reached Colonel Cornelius Rhodes, one of America's leading cancer researchers, Rhodes understood immediately what he was looking at. He reached for a pen before he had finished reading the first page. The connection was clear. Mustard gas destroyed rapidly dividing cells with extraordinary efficiency. Cancer cells divide rapidly. The same substance that had killed those men in Bari Harbor might, in a controlled form, be able to fight cancer. Rhodes worked quickly. He mapped the chemistry. He planned the research. The science that would take mustard gas from a weapon of war to a treatment for disease was being built on the foundation of what happened in Bari Harbor.
Let's map out how chemotherapy works. We target cancer cells, leaving healthy ones alone. The drug damages the cancer cell's DNA, causing it to die.
In 1945, Rhodes used Alexander's observations as a foundation to establish the Memorial Center for Cancer and Allied Diseases in New York. It would later become the Sloan Kettering Institute, the world's first dedicated cancer research institution. Inside that institution, researchers began the work of refining the chemistry, taking what had been a weapon and turning it into something that could be administered in a controlled dose to a cancer patient. Within 4 years, derivatives of sulfur mustard had been synthesized into a medical compound. The same molecule that had blinded sailors in Bari Harbor had been transformed into something that could save lives. In 1949, the United States Food and Drug Administration approved a drug called mustargin. Its chemical name was mechlorethamine. It was the world's first chemotherapy drug. It came directly from the Bari Disaster. From a burning harbor in Italy to a labeled vial in a pharmacy, from a classified report that almost disappeared forever to a treatment that would reach patients in hospitals around the world. The chemistry that had mixed with the oil in Bari Harbor on December 2nd, 1943 was now flowing through IV lines in civilian hospitals. The same molecule, a completely different purpose, a completely different outcome. Today, chemotherapy treats over 100 different types of cancer. Millions of people alive right now owe their survival to treatments that trace a direct line back to that burning harbor in Italy, back to the men who died in the water not knowing what was killing them, back to a 29-year-old doctor who wrote a report that the most powerful man in the Allied world told him was wrong. The men who were pulled from Bari Harbor, blinded, burning, dying from a weapon their own government had placed there, did not die for nothing. Their deaths became the foundation of modern cancer treatment. They died so that the next generation of doctors would know that the same chemistry which destroyed a body could, in the right hands, save one. That knowledge has now saved millions of lives. There is no memorial in Bari Harbor to the men who died there on December 2nd, 1943. No monument to the sailors who burned. No plaque for the civilians who were never counted. The official records were altered. The families were never told the truth. Churchill called it a mistake that never happened. The harbor today looks exactly like any other Mediterranean port on any other ordinary day. But the water remembers 2,000 bombs, 83 confirmed dead from gas exposure, over 1,000 civilians never officially counted, one report that almost disappeared forever, and one discovery that changed medicine for every human being who came after. If this story deserved to be told, subscribe, because there are hundreds more like it that history forgot on purpose.